For over 100 years, this section of Connecticut has drawn artists from all over who've been attracted by the area's natural beauty and who ended up moving here permanently because of the community that they were able to found here. This summer, for 3 months, the Mystic Museum of Art is mounting an exhibition celebrating these founding and early members who made us what we are today. This exhibition is really about our history. And when I say us, I'm not talking about the museum. I mean Mystic itself. I'm Amelia Onorato, the exhibitions manager at the Mystic Museum of Art. Welcome to a preview of the summer's exhibition, The Founders. Charles Harold Davis, founder of the Mystic Museum of Art, then known as the Mystic Art Association, traveled to Paris. He studied briefly at the Académie Julian before taking a little side trip to the forest of Fontainebleau, where he discovered the Barbizon art colony. At that time, there was this big dynastic shift that was happening in the art community, where a lot of young artists, especially, were turning away from the traditional, very solid and staid art academy tradition. So when he returned to the United States in the 1890s, he was really searching for that same type of energy and that same type of natural beauty, and he found it here in Mystic. Davis ended up being so inspired by what he saw here that between 1900 and his death in 1933, he painted almost 900 paintings. They were exhibited far and wide to great acclaim, and he drew a lot of attention to this little neck of the woods, including the attention of Henry Ward Ranger. When he saw this amazing rugged feel that Charles Davis was presenting, he was intrigued, and he came out to Noank for the first time in 1902. And by 1904, he had settled permanently on the banks of the Mystic River down in Noank, Connecticut. And now we had two incredibly nationally renowned artists living in the area. And they brought in so many other aspiring artists in such droves that local newspapers were running stories imploring these artists to not wipe their oil brushes on the leaves and grass in the pastures because it was making the local cows sick. The Mystic Art Colony actually became so large, it wasn't constrained to just Mystic anymore. It stretched all the way down to the mouth of the Mystic River, which is flanked on one side by Mason's Island and the other side by Noank, Connecticut. Mason's Island, it was where artists like Herbert Stoops, Lester Baranda, his daughter Bonnie Baranda, Garrett Price, and Y.E. Soderbergh ended up settling. A lot of folks also ended up in Noank, like Ranger, and especially Robert Brackman and Lars Thorsen.
I'm so excited that we're going to be able to feature the Frances Brackman painting in this new exhibition.
So am I. She's one of the favorites in the collection. The reason I bring up Brackman is that he was one of the foremost portrait painters of his time period. He painted JFK, he painted Charles Lindbergh.
Do I understand that we have the dress itself in the archives?
We not only have her dress, we actually found her handkerchief wrapped up in tissue paper as well. Brackman is probably the most interesting in terms of this preview. He was not from the Mystic area, most of these artists were not, but he was born the furthest afield. He was born in Odessa, in what is now Ukraine. He emigrated to the United States as a child, ended up in New York City, and that is how, like many of our other early artist members, he started commuting out to Mystic in the summers, fell in love with the area, and moved permanently. He also taught classes out of his studio, which is attached to his home that is still standing in Noank today. These studio classes were very well attended and very fondly remembered. We have first-hand accounts of how the local boys in town, when they heard that Brackman had a live model, used to come over and peek in the windows, because those models were often ladies in various stages of undress. So I mentioned that most of the artists in the Mystic Art Colony, early Mystic Art Association, were transplants. They ended up moving here from further afield. One of the exceptions is Ken Bates, who grew up in Mystic. His father was the local reverend, and Ken left town to attend the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts in the 1920s. And that's where he met his future wife, Gladys Edgerly. And in 1926, the Bateses moved back to Mystic, back to his hometown, where the fledgling Mystic Art Association was 13 years old and was blossoming. By 1930, the annual exhibitions had gained national acclaim. There were newspaper reporters coming from New York, from Boston. There were hundreds of guests at the opening receptions. And so it was decided that a permanent location was really required. And 1930 was the same year that the old Rafferty property, this property, went up for sale for a paltry $5,000, about $80,000 in today's money. And the reason why waterfront property in downtown Mystic was so cheap was it was literally the town dump. As the Mystic art community had done all along, they banded together to really make this a reality. So when I say the Founders Exhibition is about the history of Mystic, I mean it. Many of the works that will be on display have been loaned by private collectors, so they're not usually available for people like you and me to see. And a lot of the scenes and locations depicted are of local areas that still exist to this day. So we have this incredible privilege that Mystic today, although it has been very modernized, is still very much the Mystic that brought in the art colonists, that brought in the attention, that caused everything else that exists here today.